Hello and a very good morning and welcome to the latest in our Euronews debate series. We're gathered here this morning for this session called Travel After 2020, the New Reality, a roundtable discussion. In a moment, I'm going to be introducing the great lineup of guests I've got for this morning. My name is Damon Embling. I'm a journalist with Euronews and I'm going to be moderating this session this morning. And if you do have any questions for me or any of the panelists that you're about to see, then do leave them in the comments section just below the video where you're watching us this morning online. So why are we gathered here today? Well, hot off the press is this brand new trend report. It's called Travel After 2020. What will tourism look like in our new reality? I've co-authored this report with a trend forecasting agency called GlobeTrender on behalf of Euronews. And this report is identifying lots of new things in terms of where travel and tourism is going over the coming months and the coming years, new trends, new consumer behaviours, new consumer mindsets. So what does it all mean for the industry? We'll be discussing exactly that this morning. So let me just tell you a bit more about this paper. Let's have a look at a slide here so I can give you some more context about what we've been doing at Euronews. So we've been partnering up, as I say, with GlobeTrender, which is a travel trend forecasting agency, to write this report, Travel After 2020. What will tourism look like in our new reality? Why has Euronews been involved? Well, we have lots of experience of working with the travel and tourism sectors, and we've been helping to lead the global conversation around the future of travel and tourism, particularly this year since the COVID-19 pandemic truly hit in March. We've been holding a series of virtual debates as part of the Euronews debate series, featuring industry leaders, big thinkers in the industry, giving us their perspectives and mapping out where they think travel and tourism is going over the coming months and the coming years. We're also publishing this trend report today as Euronews launches a new travel vertical called Euronews Travel, which is going to be across our social media and digital platforms at Euronews, and that's going to be telling some of the stories at this heart of this paper, which we're going to be discussing during this session. The trend report we're publishing is based on qualitative research. We've been doing lots of interviews over the past couple of months, me and Jenny from GlobeTrender, who I'm about to introduce you to, talking to lots of different people in the industry and lots of people representing tourism and different projects and initiatives right around the world. We've also been studying media analytics, industry data and reports. Now, within this report that we're publishing today, the trend report, we've identified 6 emerging trends which we think are going to rise in prominence over the coming months and the coming years post 2020. And they've been identified within 6 current tourism and travel themes that are all out there. And this paper is really kind of a lot of food for thought for the industry, really, talking about the impacts of marketing and communication in particular, as the industry looks to rebuild and revitalize itself over the coming months. So that's a little bit about the trend report that we're going to be discussing today. I think it's right now that I introduce Jenny Southan, who's the editor and founder of GlobeTrender, who, as I say, has been working with us at Euronews on this trend report. Good morning to you, Jenny.
Good morning, Damon. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks very much indeed for joining us. So you've identified these 6 emerging new trends within our trend report. Just talk us through them and how you've identified them.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think we have another slide to go alongside this segment. So yeah, as you can see, we've got 6 themes and 6 trends that we think are most relevant for 2021 and beyond. So while the themes we have focused on have been gaining momentum over the last few years, the trends we have identified are the ones that we predict will take off over the coming year as a specific consequence of the pandemic. So take celestial escapes. After months of cabin fever, there has been a universal hunger for wide open spaces and unpolluted night skies, especially for people who live in cities. During the crisis, people have been forced to contemplate some of life's bigger questions. We predict that time spent appreciating the enormity of the universe by gazing at stars will help us gain perspective. Glamper journeys are perfect for a pandemic because they allow people freedom to explore a country away from crowds and allow you to be entirely safe and self-sufficient. You don't have to stay in a hotel if you don't want to, and you only need to stop to load up on groceries or admire a view. Another trend we have isolated is cultivations. During lockdown, it seemed like everyone on Instagram was baking sourdough bread and growing their own vegetables. So cultivations are an extension of this desire to reconnect with the earth and learn new skills. Next year, we will see a rise in people seeking to spend time on farms, ranches, and self-sufficient retreats where they can take part in harvests, forage for edible mushrooms, or discover the joys of agriculture. Our next trend relates to wellness tourism. We predict that longevity retreats will rise to the fore as the quest for super health and immunity becomes a powerful motivation for tourists seeking self-betterment against the background of a global health crisis. There will be particular interest in the world's blue zones, such as Okinawa in Japan, where people have the longest lifespan. Authenticity has become a well-worn buzzword, but the sentiment is more valid than ever. We predict that community immersion will be at the forefront of traveling for good in years to come, and will be a highly effective way of redistributing wealth and preventing over-tourism. In 2021 and beyond, spending time with economically marginalised residents, sometimes staying with families themselves, will build and revitalise human connections and direct funds straight into the pockets of those who need it most. The final trend in our report is co-working camps. So you've heard of digital nomads and co-working spaces such as WeWork. You've seen how hotels have been turning their lobbies into laptop-friendly environments and more recently converting rooms into offices. But the next logical step is to cater to people who want to work remotely alongside other professionals, but in beautiful places. Because the pandemic has proved that remote working is viable, simply being abroad will be the mindful alternative to booking annual leave for a designated 1-week holiday where you're lying on the beach trying not to check your emails. So co-working camps will allow people to be productive, exchange ideas, and build in activities that leave them feeling nourished and inspired. So hopefully that gives you a good overview of the report, which is out today. So please go away and download it after this session, and get in touch if you would like more information or guidance on how to respond to these trends. So now back to you, Damon.
Thanks, Jenny. Laying on a beach, not checking emails. It sounds perfect, doesn't it? Thanks very much indeed for that insight, Jenny. And really all of that Jenny has just been talking about, all those emerging trends in our trend report that we're launching today, we're going to be the basis of our discussions. So let's bring in our excellent panel of other guests that we have with us for this roundtable this morning, as well as Jenny from Globe Trender in London. Also in London, we've got Amanda Hills, who's the president of MMGY HillsBalfour, which is a communications and marketing partner working with tourism brands and organizations right around the world. Good morning to you, Amanda.
Good morning, Damon, and thanks so much for having me on the show.
Pleasure. Nice to see you there in London. Also in Madrid, in Spain, we've got Michel Julian, who's the senior officer within the Tourism Market Intelligence and Competitiveness Department at the UN WTO. Good morning to you, Michel.
Good morning, everyone.
Great to see you. And last but not least, in Edinburgh, in Scotland this morning, we've got Chris Greenwood, who's the Senior Tourism Insight Manager with Visit Scotland. Good morning to you, Chris.
Good morning, and thank you very much for having me.
Thanks very much. Looking forward to your contribution in this roundtable this morning. I'd like to start by going to Madrid and speaking to Michel Julian, who's from the UN WTO, because Michel, I think before we start looking at the future at travel post-2020, we should sort of reflect on where we are right now, right? And looking back a little bit, because the COVID-19 pandemic, as we all know, has had a massive impact on travel and tourism. You've just literally published some new research this week about the state of the industry. Just talk us through that and to give us some context about where things are at.
Thank you very much, Damon, for the kind invitation. As we know, COVID-19 has caused a dramatic disruption to tourism, a sector that generates 7% of global trade and also creates millions of jobs. And this is reflected on the unprecedented decline of 70% in international tourist arrivals during January-August 2020, which translates into a loss of $730 billion in much needed tourism exports revenues, which is around 8 times the income loss of the 2000 economic crisis. So having said that, and based in our scenarios, a decline of close to 70% is expected for the whole of 2020 and potentially a rebound in 2021. Of course, this in a highly uncertain context over the evolution of the pandemic and also low confidence. This is why UNWTO, as a specialized agency of the United Nations, calls for a safe, responsible, and coordinated restart of tourism in order to build back stronger and better with more innovation and more sustainability as the new normal. Back to you, Damon.
Michel, from the UNWTO, thank you very much indeed for sharing that research with us. And I think that really gives us the stark reality of where things are at in travel and tourism right now. And clearly the COVID-19 pandemic is not going anywhere at the moment. Chris Greenwood, if we can go over to you in Edinburgh at Visit Scotland, it's easy to be negative about this. And I know that it's had a huge impact on the industry and a lot of companies, a lot of destinations are suffering. But surely out of every crisis, there's an opportunity, isn't there?
Yes, there is. And I think we don't want to downplay the impact that COVID-19 has had on families, households and businesses. But as I said, if we look back to the financial crisis of 2009, that had a significant impact on a number of businesses and tourism as well. But we saw some major developments that came out of that. If you think of things like Uber, sort of TripAdvisor, all these kind of digital innovations that developed, now is a great time to, as Michel said, build back better, think about responsible tourism, and also opportunities for innovation and redevelopment of tourism products. So, yeah, out of chaos can come some good.
Amanda Hills, let's cross over to you in London at HillsBalfour. Obviously, you do communications and marketing for tourism brands and destinations right around the world. We know what's happened to the industry. We know it's been tough and it still very much is tough for the industry. But sort of looking forward in the sense of this innovation, rethinking, we hear this word regenerative travel now. How do you think brands and destinations should be adapting and looking forward to the future post-2020, which is really the essence of our trend report that we're publishing today?
Yeah, thank you, Damon. I think really what's so critical about this opportunity is that we are now going to grow back better. And one thing I think we really found in terms of tourism was back in sort of about April, we realized came a moment when people were actually moving away from discussing sort of COVID and the issues attached to them. But what they wanted to do is they wanted to actually look at a positive horizon. They wanted to look at positivity in the future. And so we launched a campaign with the World Travel and Tourism Council, which we called Together in Travel. And it was really a sort of brand agnostic campaign, which just said, who loves travel out there? And you know what we need to do? We need to have this conversation because we may not be able to travel right now, but we all know that we share this incredible passion because it's in our DNA and that's what we are as travelers. So we launched this campaign and it was really extraordinary. It just meant that consumers and travel brands and everybody that works in the tourism industry alike really all came together. And we've actually reached 80 million impressions so far and climbing. And I think that's just such a massive reflection on the fact that we want to be inspired, we want to dream, we want to know, because at the end of the day, travel will come back. It's just a question of when we can travel and how we can travel and how we can travel safely, which is going to be so critical going forward. So I love reading this report. I think it's so exciting because we have this opportunity to press this great reset button. And I think that's exactly what we're going to do. And I think these consumer trends that have been identified and the products that the travel industry are creating in order to match the consumer desire, I think is going to have such a positive impact on travel and tourism in the future.
Amanda, thank you very much for that for now. Let's go back to Jenny Southan, who co-authored this trend report with us from Globe Trender. Jenny, we heard Amanda there talking about the industry pressing the reset button, but obviously consumers and customers are pressing the reset button as well, particularly in the wake of the pandemic. It seems a lot of us have got this sort of desire now to get a bit closer to nature, to get out there in the wilderness, to get the fresh air, to enjoy life outside, probably because a lot of us have been locked up in our homes for many months, particularly at the beginning of this year. Just talk us through this trend that you identified as part of wilderness and where you see wilderness tourism going now.
Yeah, okay, yeah. I mean, I do think wilderness is such a big one. I mean, as I said, the themes have been sort of bubbling under the surface for a while. There's definitely been a desire, a craving for spending time in nature, as people that are very urbanized. So many of us live in cities these days, and so we feel very disconnected from nature. And I think what's interesting, particularly about the celestial escapes trend, is that through the research I've been doing, it seems that as so many of us live in cities, we don't get to see the night skies as we should. And so actually being able to see the Milky Way on a clear, dark night has become a luxury, literally a luxury. So our whole sort of perception of what luxury means is changing, and what luxury travel means. And so actually going to places like Namibia or Scotland, even, that's right on our doorstep, or France, amazing night skies in France. There are, these places will become sought after as places to really sort of regroup, and especially in this time of crisis that I think has put a huge mental strain on us.
Jenny from Globe Trender, thank you very much indeed for that. If you're just joining us, if you're just watching this session, this is a roundtable called Travel After 2020, the New Reality, hosted by Euronews, and it's based on the publication today of a new travel trend report that's being published by Euronews in partnership with Globe Trender, where Jenny is from. If you've got any questions, do leave them in the comments box just below the video where you're watching. I can see lots of questions coming in before me, so thanks for those, and I promise I will get round to some of them in a few moments, so keep sending your questions in for any of our panelists. Let's go back to Edinburgh now in Scotland, and Chris Greenwood, who's from Visit Scotland. Chris, when you hear Jenny there talking about our renewed love for the wilderness, for nature, looking at the starry skies, that must be music to your ears, isn't it, in Scotland?
It is, yes. We do have dark skies areas in Scotland, and Fries and Galloway, and up in the north. I think it's part of a broader trend towards space tourism that was identified, as Jenny said. It's something that's been developing for quite a while. I think really it all links back to a sense of tourism as a transformational experience for many travellers, and this goes through to some of the trends that your report highlights in terms of the journey is part of the experience. The travel is part of the experience. So, to be able to experience dark skies when, large proportions of Europe suffer from light pollution, it adds to the overall kind of sense of the journey and the transformation that people are going through. So, that's being able to be in open spaces, to be able to go out into the countryside and enjoy it. It all adds to that kind of sense of awe and connection that people get, that travel and tourism delivers.
Okay, Chris, thank you very much indeed for that. Let's go back to Madrid and Michel Julian, who's from the UNWTO. Michel, I'd just like to put one of the questions that we've received here from one of our audience this morning. We talked about wilderness and getting out there into the open, but this person is asking, what do you think the massive tourism destinations need to do to adapt to the new travel reality? We'll talk a bit more about the wilderness and the rural areas in a moment with you, but first of all, what do you think those mass sort of big tourism destinations should be doing now?
Well, I think the capacity of adaptation will be key for all the stakeholders. And what we need to look at is the connection also with urban and rural. Precisely, 2020 marks the year of tourism and rural development in recognition of tourism, the contribution of tourism to rural development. And in that sense, it's interesting to note that the pandemic has triggered a rising demand for open air, natural spaces, nature-based products connected to sustainability. And also going out from or escaping from those crowded spaces. So there's an opportunity here to link urban, rural, and also to add value to the travel experience, as Chris was mentioning, in the sense of more digitalization, for instance, more technology adapted to that travel journey, more reinforcing about the value chain, and also all those visitor management techniques that were implemented before the pandemic can also be implemented now and for the future to enhance that visitor experience, to add value also to that experience, and spread the benefits of tourism, not only at the urban level, but also at the rural one.
And I think that's a really important point, isn't it, Michel? Because, you know, the benefits many people have seen have only come to the urban areas and not so much for those rural areas. So maybe this is an opportunity to sort of redress the balance there. Of course, people are also very mindful about what they're doing now in terms of leaving a positive footprint when they go to communities, to rural areas, all the eco stuff around that, which is sort of rising in prominence. Again, when people go to rural areas, they really now do seem to want to get involved in things like agriculture. Jenny was talking about cultivations, things like that. But overall, they want to, I think the conscious traveller wants to make sure that the communities that they interact with, they get something positive out of it and a lasting legacy, right?
Right. I think, I mean, the spreads of those benefits into the local communities is key. And of course, we have to think about the partnerships also between the public, private, and also local communities to be able to enhance that travel experience and to also design products that are targeted and crafted and using also the digital transformation also to create more opportunities, because this is all about tourism, to create a resilient, sustainable, carbon neutral also, which is also important, development of tourism.
Okay, Michel. Let's go back to Amanda Hills, who's the president at HillsBalfour, joining us for this session from London today. Amanda, you've obviously been working in the travel and tourism sectors for some time now, right around the world. Obviously, the pandemic was a seismic shock. A lot of stuff is changing now in terms of how the industry is adapting, how consumer mindsets are adapting. If we look at the sort of marketing and communication aspects of all this, and if we take this sort of wilderness eco theme that we're discussing right now, how are brands and destinations having to adapt their communications and marketing? Because I guess right at the beginning of the pandemic, it was more about getting that reassurance and message out there. But what's it all about now in terms of communication and marketing?
Well, I think it's a really good point. I think what it is it's having a much more tailored approach. It's really looking at what consumers want and making sure that you can fit your product to suit. So, for example, one of the things that we're really seeing coming about, and I think most of the trends that you've been discussing really fit into this, is that we're going to see a massive advance in slow travel. So we anticipate, and it's almost going back to the question that you posed previously, how are we going to be able to build that better? Well, one of the reasons is to make sure that we try and flatten out seasonality. Those peaks have been such a difficult issue for tourism in the past, and we've now got this opportunity because of the nomadic traveler, because of the fact you can work a little bit more when you're on the road. That's going to give so much more flexibility and freedom for when we're developing our products going forward. So if you take, for example, look at the national parks in the US, it's absolutely extraordinary. 100 years ago, a gift from the then president to the people of the US to say, if you want to take time out, if you want to rest, if you want to relax, go and enjoy these amazing places of wilderness, which expand everything from the Everglades right through to Yosemite, and also even in the cities. Central Park in the cities is part of that whole sort of, you can have wilderness within the city. And I think we're going to see so much more of that. And that's where travel companies, where I think even consumers asking for that kind of stuff from travel companies are going to make sure that people can build itineraries which is really bespoke to what we need to all collectively, build tourism back in the right way.
Okay, Amanda. Jenny Southan from Globetrotter, let's go back to you, also in London for this session today. Amanda was hitting on that point, slow travel, which is identified in our trend report that we're publishing today. It does seem that the conscious traveller does want to sort of travel at a slower speed. And I think what we're saying in the report as well, aren't we, is that people, maybe don't want to go on holidays where they're jetting all over the place, go from destination to destination in a really quick succession. Things are changing in that respect, right?
Yeah, I think so. It was changing anyway, I think. But what the pandemic is sort of doing, I think, is because it's a lot of hassle now to take a flight, to take COVID tests, maybe quarantine, it doesn't make so much sense to do these short hop city breaks that we're often doing. Even a 1-week holiday doesn't always add up. So I think the shift will be towards staying abroad for longer periods. And, you know, like what this will, it will just fit in really well with the co-working trend. I think you know, it's both mindful and productive. It is practical. So we will definitely be seeing more people maybe even really relocating to sort of paradise places like Mauritius and Bermuda that are offering these new year-long digital nomad visas to let you work from paradise, for example. And we're seeing like hotels in the Maldives, like the Vakaru Maldives, which are offering these new work well packages. So they're for long stay guests, people who stay about a month, and they have access to their own alfresco offices and a boardroom on the beach, as well as a vacay PA to help with admin, things like that. So yeah, we will definitely, I don't think we will be sort of jetting around from country to country in the same way. We might be exploring within a country in a camper van or our own car, but it will be a slower pace and hopefully a more sort of appreciative pace as well.
I need to talk to my boss about getting a desk on the beach in the Maldives. That sounds amazing. What kind of people, Jenny, do you think on this point about sort of digital nomads and co-working camps in different exotic locations? What kind of people do you think are going to take that up, or are taking it up?
Yeah. Well, it seems obvious to say millennials, but it will be people. It will be professionals. But I do think it was millennials that sort of kickstarted this way of living and working. But because of the pandemic forcing everyone that can work from home to work at home, it will, you know, be applicable to other generations as well. Certainly Gen Zs are going to be eager adopters of this lifestyle. They're very sort of tech savvy, obviously. But for older generations, for the boomers, I think as well, it just makes sense. I think it's going to free people up in a way that they just haven't been before. So I think it will be a really powerful opportunity for everybody, really, that can work from a laptop.
Chris Greenwood, let's go back to you at Visit Scotland in Edinburgh. Digital nomads, co-working camps, people working in nice locations where they can get away from the hustle and bustle of life and enjoy some nice scenery at the same time. Is that something, you know, you as Visit Scotland would be advocating and you want to kind of promote within Scotland?
I believe so. I mean, there's been some short-term kind of developments. We know that, for example, there are hotels that are providing sort of day rates for rooms. So people who are maybe in, you know, shared accommodation, they're now working from home. They can book a room in a hotel that's got, you know, super fast broadband, that they'll be provided with a meal. And it's a working space away from the shared household that they happen to be in. So, you know, there are innovations in that area. But I mean, for Scotland in particular, I mean, there's the availability of digital working is pretty much ubiquitous throughout the entire country. So yeah, people are more than welcome to come along. Just addressing a couple of the points that were made previously about the cities and their role. We talk a lot about the rural areas and wilderness, and you know that really has been a driving force over the restarting of tourism from the summer. But for the cities, I think really they're kind of like the cultural centres of our destinations. And I think what we're finding is there'll be a growing appreciation of the museums and galleries that possibly have been closed or having kind of restricted numbers of people going along. So there's opportunities there to see those kind of cities as, you know, a reappreciation of their role as cultural centres and representations of destinations. So, you know, it really goes back to the traveller recognizing that their travel has an impact and a purpose. So, yeah, it's really for destinations to be able to pick up on that and encourage visitors to be able to return something to the destination.
Indeed,
Yeah,
and that's really the essence of our report, isn't it, Jenny? Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to say, in a way, it's actually one of the best times I would say to go to a city if you feel sort of safe enough in your own sort of sense of self and health, and you know, if you're willing to take that risk, because you know the galleries are kind of empty and the streets aren't too crowded, and you go to a place like Venice and it will be kind of a much better experience than it would have been before, and especially in the summers when it's, you know, jam-packed with crowds. So actually you've got to just kind of turn these things on their head sometimes and think, actually this could be a really good time to go somewhere like a city.
And Amanda Hills, I mean, this is a good point, isn't it? Because I was on a session with Brand USA just earlier this week, and we were talking about in the US how sort of cities and rural areas, you know, are both important. You know, what's your sort of insight from that American perspective about the importance of cities?
Yeah, I think very much. I mean, I really concur with Jenny and Chris, actually. I think that one of the things that's very important is obviously the cities have been affected because, you know, obviously just as London has and all the cities across Europe. So I think it's really important that we support and we help the cities as well. And they're going to be gateways. You know, if we are going to take this new route to slow travel, we're going to be flying into a destination and flying out of another one. And so actually to experience what the city's got to offer, I completely agree, Chris. You know, some of the initiatives that the likes of Nashville from the music perspective are doing and have been doing actually from a marketing point of view. They've been live streaming music so that people can feel that they're still in Nashville right now, even though they can't be there. And that I think is going to grow the appetite for people to go and see those cities. But imagine a world where you're starting in you're starting in a camper van and you're starting in New York and you can experience New York going to Central Park. So you've got your wilderness element too, and the arts and culture that is spilling out onto the streets now, you know, which is really involving the local communities, has never been more sort of more present. It's more obvious. I think it's going to be so exciting, and then driving all the way across the US. I know that's on my bucket list for sure for next
Mine
year.
too.
Mine as well. I think everybody's bucket list. Amanda, thanks very much indeed for that. If you're just joining us on this round table, this is Travel After 2020, the new reality hosted by Euronews in the context of a new trend report that Euronews is publishing on the future of travel and tourism post-2020 in collaboration with the trend forecasting agency Globetrender. If you have any questions, please do drop them in the comment section just below the video where you're watching. Michel Julian at UNWTO in Madrid, let's bring you back into this roundtable discussion. I want to put a question that we've actually had in from one of our viewers of this session this morning. You know, a big part of our report is the ecotourism theme and the trend that Jenny has identified amongst that, sustainability, you know, people's growing awareness of looking after the planet. This person is asking, and I'd like to put this to you, Michel, will the tourism world really care about sustainability when tourism rebounds? I mean, they're saying, is it all just this, or is there really going to be a renewed passion for sustainability, do you think?
I think, yes, there's a growing conscious about the responsible travel. I mean, what is the impact, the real impact of tourism on society, on communities? And from the consumer trend, for instance, I mean, you have been witnessing a more responsible tourist, a tourist that cares about the environment, about a positive footprint, that wants to contribute and wants to feel that he or she is contributing to a positive development of tourism, spreading those benefits, as I said earlier, among the communities. And so I think this is very important when we analyze the consumer behavior, which wants to live like a local, which wants to make a contribution. And if you see the supply is also making extraordinary efforts in corporate social responsibility programs, in green investments, for instance. I think, I mean, the future, and I will say the present also, the present and the future is sustainability in all senses. And of course, innovation, to think out of the box and trying to come up, with innovative ideas to support that sustainable and resilient tourism development.
Okay, Michel. Jenny, I'd just like to go back to you from Globe Trend. What Michel's talking about there, the importance of sustainability for the industry sort of going forward. If we look at ecotourism within the trend report that we're publishing today, you've identified this trend, as you briefly mentioned earlier, cultivations. This really taps into a lot of what Michel was saying there, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, cultivations is a lovely one, and I think as I was sort of explaining it, it's reflecting a deeper desire for people to connect with the earth and really learn about their place in the environment, where their food comes from. For example, we are so disconnected with the food production, the food chain, essentially. Everything is prepackaged in supermarkets. We're very unaware of the carbon footprint, for example, of the food we eat. And I would say, I mean, I watched the David Attenborough documentary on Netflix last night, the new one, his witness statement, which I would urge absolutely everyone to watch. I mean, I was horrified and truly inspired equally, like, by watching it. And I mean, I just came away from that feeling like I want to say, like sustainability is an absolute necessity to travel. Sustainability means that we can do this, live in this way forever. That's what sustainability means. Like, before the pandemic, nothing we were doing in relation to travel really was sustainable. It was madness. Like, the fact that we've all been forced to stop is so important. It's given, like, truly demonstrated, like, how the planet can recover really very quickly if we allow it to. And there are, like, the innovations that we're being forced to pursue now are going to be so positive potentially going forward if we don't let greed come in the way of it. So,
Amanda Hills, it was absolute madness. Do you agree with that? Do you think, actually, one viewer is asking, responsible travel, is that the key to the future of tourism, to reopening it?
Yeah, I think it massively is. I'm completely with Jenny. I too am in awe and was horrified with the David Attenborough film. And I think that actually has come at the most incredible moment while travel's going to reset. I think he's something very powerful. That and Michael Palin, I would urge people to watch that one as well, because it's really just reminding ourselves of authenticism and bringing back responsible tourism. And I think it will. I think there's a great stat, isn't there, that 10% of the global population are now eating less meat as a result of COVID. So I think there are some seismic shifts that have happened. And as you say, Jenny, we are really repressing the button. We've got this opportunity to restart it. I do think that, responsible environmental tourism is going to have a massive part of the future. I'm really excited.
Yeah. And I was going to say that actually in this documentary, he says that back in 1937, 66% of our world was wilderness. Do you know how much wilderness there is left now? 2020, 35%.
Wow.
And that actually frightens me, because one of the trends I'm talking about is wilderness travel. I'm saying, isn't it wonderful? Let's all go to the wilderness. Maybe we shouldn't. Maybe we should just let it be. So I suppose that's the big question, is how can we enjoy the wilderness? How can we spend time in it without ruining it as tourists?
I think that's a really important question for Chris Greenwood from Visit Scotland, because Chris, you live in an area of Scotland and Scotland as a whole, which has got beautiful landscapes up there, places where you can truly escape from everyone and sort of stay in a little hut on a hill and just be on your own if you want to. How much of a balance does there have to be between sort of too many people coming to the wilderness and then the wilderness is no longer wilderness?
Yeah, well, I think we need to remember that prior to the start of this year, we were talking about over-tourism. There was concerns of, you mentioned Venice, Barcelona, Amsterdam, all these destinations were putting plans in place to deal with over-tourism, and there was a tension developing between residents and tourists. Now, I think what we've seen is that following lockdown that was occurring in many destinations, and as Jenny said, the recovery that we saw in having cleaner air, cleaner water. We remember the headlines of being able to see the fish return to the canals of Venice. People were astounded by this. I think that there are two parts. There's the consumer aspects, and I go back to that reference of transformational tourism. People are finding that they want to give back, and one extreme would be volunteer tourism. So people going to do rewilding exercises, to volunteer on a social basis, so the impact of their travel isn't necessarily offset, but it is. They feel as though the investment they're making in the travel, could be it the carbon output or whatever, that they're actually returning something to kind of pay for that. But also at the other end, it could be something simple like buying local, supporting local businesses, so that the economic benefit that tourism definitely provides to many areas, particularly rural areas, is seen as supporting the community. From a supply side, an industry side, responsible tourism is at the centre of Scotland's national tourism strategy. And really what we're trying to say there is it's about trying to get a balance between the economic benefits that tourism provides, but also protecting the environment and protecting the communities. And what COVID has shown is that communities have really come to the forefront and understanding their concerns about tourism, initially over tourism, but now, possibly the influx of visitors to areas that maybe have low cases of COVID. So much more listening going on. But also for Scotland in particular, the environment and the landscape is central to people's perception of it as a destination. So too many tourists, and therefore the drive for economic benefits, will obviously damage the environment, and therefore the product is affected. So it's all about maintaining that balance.
And I know, Chris, in our report, we've identified a couple of examples in there of this kind of ecotourism giving something back. Wildland in Scotland is an organisation that gives you a place to stay remotely in Scotland, but you can also get involved in that rewilding, doing nature conservation. We also talk about in our report about goat villages in the Himalayas in India, where they're trying to revive, agriculture and to stop farmers disappearing off to the cities, that migration away from those rural areas. And they're bringing in sort of visitors with this conscious travel mindset to kind of help do that and actually work locally, help in agriculture and farming, and to kind of actually sort of reverse some declines in traditional ways of life. And I think really this is growing in prominence amongst the consumer and the conscious traveller. They do really want to kind of have this impact. I think, Michel Julian, if we can go back to you in Madrid, the UNWTO, when we talk about sort of giving something back to the planet and ecotourism, I think for brands, destinations, companies, I think in the past there's been a danger, really, hasn't there, of it just being very tokenistic and not really going very far and just sort of saying, oh, our hotel is eco-friendly, we don't use detergents while washing our towels. But, travelers want much more than that, don't they, these days?
Exactly. It's much more than that, brand, because the brand also, represents and can mean so many things, but it's up to the destination or the hotel to give a real meaning to that. And how, for instance, in the service, also in the accessibility, which is also fundamental here. Not only accessibility for people with some disadvantages, but also accessibility in the sense of support to the destination's recovery, to the sustainability. I think governments have been demonstrating the support to the recovery of tourism as a driver of the recovery also of economy. So I think this is also important. The protection of tourism also is a fundamental aspect here if we talk about the real transformative power of tourism. We need also to protect visitors. We need also to benefit the residents and the local communities. But also, if we want to talk about the transformative power of tourism and its real impact, it's also about knowing better and better understanding the customer or that visitor through big data, through market intelligence, because everything is changing so quickly and we have so many challenges ahead that we need to better grasp what is really going on and what could be also the future in that sense. So it's also measuring to manage better. And I think Visit Scotland is doing a wonderful job in that sense as a DMO in charge of governance and managing effectively the visitors.
Okay, Michel, if you're just joining us, you're watching Travel After 2020, the new reality hosted by Euronews, and we're discussing some new trends that are emerging, we think are going to emerge over the coming years, which we've got in a new trend report that we're publishing today. Michel, let me just go back to you in Madrid. I've had a question in here from one of our viewers about the aviation industry, because a lot of what we talked about today, this sort of slow, mindful travel, more sustainability, people being more aware of the environment and looking after the planet. This person is asking, how will the aviation industry look in the future? I mean, on the face of it, this isn't great news for the aviation industry, is it?
Well, we have to bear in mind that out of those 1.5 billion international tourist arrivals, which are overnight visitors that were recorded in 2019, just before the pandemic, some 57% travel by air. So we have to recognize also the big contribution of air transport to the development of tourism worldwide. But also we need to recognize that air transport is making efforts also to be more sustainable, investing in new technologies, because this is something that all transports now need to be prepared to be more sustainable, to ensure a sustainable mobility in that sense, and that there's also integration between the different modes of transport. So as you know, air transport is also investing a lot in protocols, for instance, of sanitation and security.
Okay, great. Michel, thank you for that. Amanda, I'd like to go back to you at HillsBalfour. One of the other themes that we're concentrating in this trend report out today is wellness tourism. And I'm going to ask Jenny a little bit about her trend that she's identified, longevity retreats, in a moment. But I think the pandemic in particular has made us all think, hasn't it, about our health and well-being. I know the wellness tourism sector has been growing for some years now, a fast-growing sector. But I think now, correct me if I'm wrong, when brands and destinations are communicating with potential consumers and with existing consumers, I think the conscious traveller is going to be a bit more discerning, aren't they? They're going to want to see more about the scientific evidence, scientific proof, to be more convinced that actually going away on a wellness break is going to do them some good in the wake of this pandemic.
Yeah, no, I think absolutely right. I think there's going to be, I think wellness is, it was increasingly becoming something which you just had to have as part of your holiday. And I think it was almost an expectation that if you wanted to be able to go to the spa or the massage or the keep fit room, you could. And so I do agree with you. I think we've all been living at home. We've all felt very claustrophobic, and we've been thinking and perhaps having too much time to think. And obviously, in many cases, the mental health situation is really, we probably only know the very tip of the iceberg at the moment. And so actually, it's going to be very important. Wellness is going to be an incredibly important part of tourism going forward. And yes, absolutely, we can see new niches coming through and new tours and itineraries that are very specific with much more scientific based evidence, which I know that you've covered extensively in the report, which is very exciting. And I think that's going to be a very big part of what destinations are going to do going forward.
Okay, Amanda. Jenny, let's go back to your Globe Trender. I mentioned there that you obviously identified this trend within wellness of longevity retreats. Tell us a little bit more about that. But also, I mean, where's it at in terms of the market? Because let's face it, you can spend tens of thousands of euros on having wellness treatments, remedies, all sorts of pampering. Is it all about luxury, or is there a different sort of set of market factors that kind of appeal to consumers?
Yeah, it's a great question. Yeah, you can definitely spend limitless amounts of money on eternal life, There's some incredible... Right? Yeah, there's some incredible places around the world that are probably pretty close to giving it to us, like Clinique La Prairie in Switzerland, which sell these incredible programs that cost almost €40,000 that are sort of the cutting edge in anti-aging and longevity treatments. But yeah, you do not need to be a millionaire to learn the secret to a longer life, a longer good quality life. I mentioned earlier the world's blue zones. These are places that scientists have identified where people have the longest lifespans. I think most people know about Japan, specifically Okinawa, which is a sort of subtropical island in Japan, where people live a very long time. But there are also blue zones in Greece, Sardinia, California, and Costa Rica. So people will be certainly interested, I think, in going to these places. But there are some really interesting habits that any of us can adopt that are exhibited across all of these communities. So, for example, eating smaller plates of food, plant-based diets, a cup of coffee in the morning, a glass of wine at sunset, having a dog, have been part of a community and part of a group. So spending time with people, sitting down to eat meals with friends and family, getting enough sleep. I mean, these are all habits that are common to these blue zones, which is so interesting. And you do not have to be rich to live that way. Going to a blue zone or going to maybe a retreat that helps you learn about these things and sort of build them into your life could be really, really helpful. But yeah, longevity doesn't have to be out of reach to people that aren't millionaires.
Okay, thank you very much indeed for that, Jenny. Michel, I just want to go back to you at the UNWTO in Madrid. Just for a final question I'm going to take from our audience here. Looking forward, this person is asking, how should travel destinations support tourism companies in the rebound, particularly when there are low budgets involved? What do you think destinations should be doing to help companies?
Well, I think, they should, first of all, work together. I think that's the key for success. The effective collaboration between destinations, between businesses, between also communities is key. I think we all have to work together in the situation because we all have the same objective, is to restart tourism, as I said in my first intervention, in a safe, responsible, coordinated, and seamless way too. But yes, the collaboration is key, but also, exchange of knowledge. And having also common priorities and a long-term also vision. Because this is the only way that, for example, destinations will market the right message, or companies will also work effectively with destinations in reaching that common objective.
Okay, Michel, we're running out of time. We've just got 5 minutes left. So in this final part, I set all of the guests on this round table a little bit of homework to do ahead of this session, where I asked them to think about what their favourite type of travel is and what they hope to be getting back into post-2020, really in the context of this trend report that we're publishing today, and to bring something along with them that really symbolises their favourite form of travel and what their hopes are for the future. Chris, no pressure. Let's go to you first in Edinburgh from Visit Scotland. Tell me about
thank you. Thank you, Damon. I really appreciated the challenge and didn't give me sleepless nights coming up with this. I was conflicted. Originally, I was going to show my smartphone. Its ubiquitous nature of being able to take pictures, record memories, share my thoughts with other people. I thought that would be it. But there's something that I've recently taken up which matches some of the trends in terms of wilderness and wellness. So what I have here, I don't know if you can see that.
Yeah.
That is open water swimming buoy. So I've recently taken up open water swimming for safety reasons. You have that dragging behind you to identify you. But from a wellness perspective, being outside in rivers, lochs and seas, is regenerative, restorative, wellness, mindfulness, and just being able to immerse yourself in nature and the outdoors, and that's what I would like to get back to.
Quite liberating, I guess, as well, and that really kind of cuts across a lot of the themes and contexts that we've been discussing today. Amanda Hill.
Morning, yeah, it can be, yes.
Good stuff. Thanks, Chris. Amanda Hills, are we going to see you in your life jacket?
You know what? I think it may be a little bit cold. No offense. So,
I wouldn't go in the Thames in London.
So I like a little bit more sunshine, I think. So I really was torn, I'm afraid. So I've got sons. I've got a husband who's a fanatic on the rugby. So I thought I might bring the rugby ball to say, please, can we get the rugby lines to a back in South Africa? Please, can we all be ready? But what I actually really thought was, this is my feel about tourism is it's about community, it's about authenticity, it's about making sure we build it back better. So this is a lei from Hawaii, one of my destinations, which I love enormously. I love the community. I love the way we're going to build it back better for the Hawaiian people. And this is something, when you're presented with a lei in Hawaii, you must never give it away. You must always give it away, but you must never throw it away. So when you're gifted it will be then transferred to someone else. So Damon, I'm giving you my lei, and this is taking the love of aloha and making travel come back. So I'll make sure that I put it in the slow post, so it's all sustainable. So there we go. That's my aloha spirit.
Okay, so we've had a aloha spirit, a life buoy, a ball. What else are we going to have? Michel Julian, what are you going to impress us with?
Well, as Jenny was mentioning, small things make a real difference. And I've been enjoying during these pandemic times live streaming music, as Amanda was pointing out. So I have here, I don't know if you can see it, some pentagrams and notes, because I'm a music fan. So I really, really look forward to live music, to experience, human interaction, music, festivals, and all the joy that music also transmit, and that connection with tourism and culture too.
You should have told me you were into music, because then you could have sung us out on this session. We could have had a nice
I don't think I sing very well, so I prefer not to scare the crowd.
Thanks very much, Michelle. You're at WTO. Jenny, last but not least, what are you going to show us? Oh, we can't hear you, Jenny, but we can see something. I think Jenny's got a camera or something there. Just hold it up to the camera again for us, because we can't hear you. Oh, it's some shoes, or some Crocs, I think we call them. So maybe for walking or exploring. While we can't hear Jenny, maybe she's gone a bit shy to discuss them.
I'm here.
Oh, you're back. Yeah. So just tell us about your shoes.
These are my daughter's shoes. She's 2, and I just love traveling with her, and I'm looking forward to sharing so many adventures with her in the future. You know, I always used to travel alone, and now I never want to go anywhere without her. And I also really just hope that she has an incredible planet to enjoy in the decades to come. So just going back to that reminder of, the importance of sustainability. So yeah.
It's an important final thought, I think, from you, Jenny. Thanks very much for that, because as we've been saying, travel is in our DNA. I think a lot of people want to get back to traveling, but very much in a sort of sustainable and eco-friendly way as we look to the future. Thanks very much indeed for watching this session. And thanks to our guest, Jenny Southan, who was the co-author of our trend report that we're publishing at Euronews today on the future of travel. She's the editor and founder at Globe Trender. Thanks, Jenny.
Thank you so much. It's been great to be involved in this discussion.
Yeah, thanks for all your analysis and insight and all your work on the report that we've published. Amanda Hills, the president of MMGY HillsBalfour, joined us from London. Thanks very much indeed to you, Amanda.
And thanks so much. This has been really informative, and it's really exciting to feel everybody coming together on the building back.
And sending that aloha love back to you. Michel Julian, the senior officer at Tourism Market Intelligence and Competitiveness at UNWTO. Thanks very much indeed for joining us from Madrid.
Thank you very much, Damon. Thank you very much, dear colleagues. It was a great pleasure to share our views here in this debate, and we look forward to traveling again.
Great stuff. And Chris Greenwood, Senior Tourism Insight Manager at Visit Scotland, joined us from Edinburgh. Thanks very much to you as well, Chris.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me, and to hopefully an optimistic and positive 2021 for tourism.
Here's to that.
Yeah.
And, thank you very much indeed to everyone. And I think watching, I hope you found that really insightful as the industry looking forward post 2020. You know, we talked about lots of emerging themes and trends there, lots of food for thought as the travel industry tries to get back on its feet in the wake of the damage of the COVID-19 pandemic. You've been hearing me talking a lot about this trend report today, haven't you? That we're publishing at Euronews in partnership with Globe Trender. If you want to get your hands on it, what you need to do is you need to search Euronews on LinkedIn, and if you find our page on there, you'll be able to download the full report. It's being published right after this session, so you'll be able to get a copy of it today, and there's lots of stuff in there, so I recommend a good read. Well, I wouldn't I, because I'm the co-author of it, but no, seriously, it's a great report and lots of insights for you to take away. Thanks very much indeed for joining us again today, and we'll see you again soon in our Euronews debate series, but from me, bye for now.